Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Tom, in 2 weeks, who are we going to go see live?
Nine Inch Nails.
9 Inch Nails?
And Explosions in the Sky.
And Explosions in the Sky.
Yeah.
9 Inch Nails, and maybe they just released a record. Trent Reznor maybe just released a new record.
Yes.
You know, I thought he took a couple years off.
He did.
Oh.
But, well, technically there was a hiatus there. It's been 5 years since his last album, The Slip. But, you know, let's look at this here. From between Pretty Hate Machine and The Downward Spiral was 5 years. Between Downward Spiral and The Fragile was 5 years. So this is actually just kind of run-of-the-mill time between albums for Trent and Co. So,
Very true. Very true.
So I'm just glad that he's making more music at all,
Now,
honestly.
well, I mean, How to Destroy Angels.
How to Destroy Angels, yes, and they came out with an album this year that we actually haven't gotten a chance to review yet. But,
I mean, we both listened to it.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if it was exactly, we felt it was of a high enough quality to really show you guys on this channel. Now, if you guys want to hear our thoughts on that, please leave us some requests and we'll bump it up in our backlog. But Tom, now can you just give for us, you know, do you like 9 Inch Nails? I mean, you're not even wearing a 9 Inch Nails
shirt. No, I forgot to bring one. I feel like such a dope. But yeah, 9 Inch Nails is one of my favorite bands. The Downward Spiral is my all-time favorite album.
I would agree with you there.
I grew up on these guys, you know, and so I was very excited to hear when Trent posted that he had a new 9 Inch Nails album done. So let's just dive right into this. Now, you mentioned How to Destroy Angels. I mentioned briefly that the last album he put out as 9 Inch Nails was The Slip in 2008. He's done some soundtracks since then. The Social Network, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Man, the Social Network soundtrack was so good.
It was great. And then he put out a couple of works with How to Destroy Angels. You saw his music going in a little bit different direction there. And while 9 Inch Nails is 9 Inch Nails and forever will be its own thing, it's still the brainchild of Trent Reznor. So all the little stuff he does in between, you know that it's going to find its way into 9 Inch Nails' sound. And you can definitely tell here because there are some things that are very indicative on hesitation marks that you hear on something like How to Destroy Angels or the soundtracks that he's worked on. And that is a lot more focus on the subtle electronic kind of chill sound. But from there, it's all about how he builds it up. Because what's really different about Hesitation Marks and other 9 Inch Nails work is that it never really reaches that high intensity. I mean, you look at Downward Spiral and songs like Heresy and Closer even, where he's just screaming at you, and you don't get much of that here. It's a little more chill.
Even on the Slip really explored the lows and what would be the ghost tracks that he released, and then also he had some very loud moments on that album too. Hesitation Marks is to me, what I noticed about it is it was closer in structure and how he approached the songwriting and composition of the album to Year Zero, his 2007 album, than any other record I could compare
If I had to compare it to one 9 Inch Nails record, it would be Year Zero.
Yeah, now he did do something different. He changed where Year Zero, you know, you saw a little bit more simply structured songs. I wouldn't say that these songs are simply structured, but they have, I don't want to say a formula, but a general layout or structure that they follow. And usually it revolves around some sort of electronic beat that is usually driving throughout most of the track, and then Trent adds layers on top of that to build intensity. And now, some of the tracks have choruses too that bring in a lot of really thrashy guitar. It gets very loud at those parts, and I love that dynamic contrast.
Yeah, and that's something that I noticed about this album as well, is that when it comes to the complexity of the tracks, the complexity comes out more in the layers and how they build than the song structures themselves. And that's something that is a little bit different. I mean, obviously, he's always incorporated a lot of layers, a lot of just like short, quick melodies. You can always tell when you hear a Trent Reznor-style electronic melody or guitar line. I mean, listen to the guitar in the bridge of Came Back Haunted. That riff in itself sounds like it could have come from any 9 Inch Nails album, regardless of era, regardless of production style or anything. Just that melody itself. I mean, that's the hallmark of just a standout artist, is when you can just hear a simple melody and know exactly where it came from. Absolutely. And that is all over Hesitation Marks. At the same time, this album's also a little bit longer. We mentioned Year Zero, which is also kind of a longer album, but I felt like Year Zero had a little bit more variety. And it justified that length. And there was also a concept driving it. One thing that I actually think is a slightly weak point of this album is I don't feel like there's really any unified theme or mood. Everything is produced very similarly, and I think it has a good consistent sound in that regard, but I just, especially when it comes to the lyrics and the presentation of the lyrics, I don't feel like there's really any central theme in anything that he was really going for in particular, and it maybe made it just a little bit weaker than some Nine Inch Nails works in the past. One track that I want to point out in particular is track 7, Everything.
Yep.
I think that that's a track that, if there's anything that interrupts the flow of this album, it's that song.
Yep.
Which is funny because I think on its own, it's not a bad song.
No, it's actually, I think he released it as a single even.
And I think it would work really well as a single.
Yep.
But it's this kind of like upbeat, kind of almost punk rocker, industrial punk rocker track.
Yeah, it reminds me of something you'd hear at like the turn of the millennium, like 99 or 2000, like just a rock song, a lot of, you know, guitar, bass. I mean, the only thing that really bothers me about that track is that annoying drum machine. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
You can do better than that.
Yeah, and so that song, while it's good on its own, I think it really interrupts the flow where you have these chill, kind of moody electronic soundscapes, especially the songs it's around, Disappointed and Satellite, which are probably have some of the most classic sounds you'll hear on this album.
Satellite to me was a track that could have been on Year Zero.
Oh, totally.
And it's one of my track picks. I thought it was just a really well-written song. I'd say, if anything, Tom, one thing I want to point out is I do feel like this album sags in the middle.
Yeah.
With the exception of Satellite, the tracks around it don't really carry the same weight as the beginning chunk of the album. The beginning of this album is some of Trent's best work. Copy of Came Back Haunted, Find My Way, All Time Low. Those tracks are very, very strong.
What a solid start to this album. And then you get to the end, and I think it's equally strong. In 2, While I'm Still Here, and Black Noise. Black Noise is more like the outro segment of While I'm Still Here.
It works really well.
But I think it was a great album decision to make that its own track, because it builds in a slightly different way, and it allows you to think of While I'm Still Here and that main melody part as its own thing. Plus, it ends with some classic Trent Reznor saxophone.
It does. It gives it a nice closure to the album.
It does.
Yeah, it's a really good thing to do.
And N2 is probably one of the most progressive tracks on this album. It completely abandons that kind of formulaic song structure that you get on some of the other tracks, and really ups the intensity as well. I loved that track. But you're absolutely right. Before that, there's a chunk there where the stuff just isn't quite as high quality. Now, I will say, even the weaker tracks on here, I still enjoyed. There weren't any tracks that I absolutely hated, so I came out liking this album overall. Now, in the scheme of Nine Inch Nails' discography, I would say this is probably one of my least favorite.
You've only heard it for a week.
That's true. It hasn't had much time to grow on me. But also, I mean, that's not as much a knock against this album as it is a testament to the quality of Nine Inch Nails' discography. Sure. I mean, a lot of Nine Inch Nails albums are some of my all-time favorites. But coming out of The Slip, I think I spent a lot of time thinking about this one in context of The Slip, because The Slip was actually probably one of Trent's poppiest albums in terms of songwriting, at least in the first half, but then in the last half he really switches it up. And what you don't get on Hesitation Marks is really much of a switch up. There's still actually a lot of pop melodies here. What I think a lot of people don't understand is that artists like Nine Inch Nails are really truly pop artists at heart. It's just about how they present it. I mean, even Nirvana and Nine Inch Nails, two very kind of crossover bands, because they took a genre that was more underground, Nine Inch Nails with industrial, Nirvana with grunge. They were genres that were going on at the time, but really what they did to bring it to the mainstream was focus on melody, which is what a lot of the artists in that genre were doing.
To a genre that didn't have those pop ideals.
Yes, exactly. And you really hear that on this album, because it gets a little bit dancier. It's way more melodic, way more about vocal layers, but also it's like 60 minutes. It's like 60 plus minutes.
Yeah, and I think you could trim a little fat on this album.
I don't think it's entirely justified.
No.
I just don't.
And it would be, you know, it would behoove us not to mention How to Destroy Angels, Trent's work with that, some of the influences that you do hear there. Now, I don't think, I think this is kind of a polarizing effort, just because I know How to Destroy Angels was a polarizing project for Trent's fans.
Yeah.
You know, hearing him do some more electronic work with like the hardcore people that want, you know, the downward spiral again. Which I think that Trent does a good job no matter what he does. He really appreciates a variety in his sound. He's willing to take risks, and Hesitation Marks is a risk. And I think overall this is a good album.
Yeah.
I would say that as Trent gets older, older, his voice, the quality of his vocals gets just a tick lower every time that he puts out an album. And the thing is that he sings more on this album, and I don't really get why. I miss my shrieking Trent. I miss the screams. You know, I want some more girth to his vocals, and I just feel like they're starting to wane as he gets a little older.
It also just relies on those vocals a little more. There aren't really those segments.
Yeah,
there aren't really those segments where there's just instrumental freakouts or a focus on instrumentals. I mean, he had segments like that from the Downward Spiral up to, you know, the Slip, where the instrumentals just take it away. This is very centered on the vocals with just the layers of electronics in the background. Now, to kind of sum it up, like I said, I don't think this is one of Nine Inch Nails' stronger albums, but I'm still not at all disappointed. I'm just happy to have Trent back working on this project, and this is still an album I'll come back to. I'm going to go ahead and give it an 83.
I'm going to go 80, just slightly lower than you, but I am super pumped to see this live.
Oh, yeah. I think these tracks will be really good.
I think they'll be great live songs. I am jacked. 2 weeks, Tom. 2 more weeks. What did you guys think of Hesitation Marks? What's your favorite Nine Inch Nails album? Let Tom and I know at www.velocitiesofmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesofmusic. As always, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, let us know what albums from 2013 you've been into lately. We will review them for you. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.
Go.